MCAT office hours. What is going on? My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, founder of Medical School Headquarters, Mapped, author of some books, host of some podcasts, all around cool guy, I think. But if you don't think so, that's okay. I don't need your approval. It's okay. I have lots of therapy for that. What is up, Petros? Petros is like, how did I get into a therapy session with you?
I'm like, this is not what I signed up for on a Thursday, but why not?
We got Petros Manasi, my therapist for the day, VP of Test Prep and Tutoring at MSHQ. 25 plus years of leading MCAT programs and pre-med programs. Petros, I never mentioned the previous company. I don't know if you like that or don't like that, or we should or shouldn't, but
probably shouldn't.
Well, we'll talk about it later. Yeah. I mean,
I've been doing this for a long time. Right?
Doing it for a long time.
That's what it comes down to.
It's one of those other companies that shall not be named, or maybe we'll see. I don't know. What's going on, Petros?
Not a whole lot. I'm excited about our next hour because we're going to talk about some fun stuff.
Yeah.
Talk
about, learn about, break some passage down, break some questions down.
Yeah. I do have a zit on my nose that showed up, and it's in the worst possible spot because when I drink a glass of water, it hits it. So
you got.
We might witness it growing over the course of the next hour.
You gotta get those pimple patches, man. Are you a pimple patch fan?
I got something else. I got my dermatologist gave me something. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Pimple patch for the win. Hydrocolloid patches, as they are known. They're like magic.
All right, I'll check them out.
Let's talk MCAT. So for those of you who are slowly joining us, we are here for the next 56 minutes to answer your MCAT questions. If you are in the middle of preparing for an MCAT, ask away. If you have questions about MCAT timing, ask away. If you have questions about MCAT materials, ask away. Petros on our team has been building out an Avengers-like group of tutors, each with their own unique skill sets to slice and dice your MCAT woes away. That is the best kind of a metaphor that I'll come up with today.
They have a particular set of skills, right?
They have a particular set of skills, as Liam Neeson says. I will find you. Yes. Petros, as we'll jump into the car section here in a second, give some time for people to join us, ask some questions. The car section is probably the far majority of students' weak link. It is their kryptonite. Why? Why is the cars section so much harder for everyone else?
So, first reason is really in its name, in that there is no content that you can fall back on, right? Like that's the other three sections, you can fall back on some content, still get through some of the questions. With the car section, there is no content. It's all critical reasoning. It's all these analytical reasoning skills. And so as a result of that, since you don't have any content that you can fall back on, what you really have to kind of build and hone are those analytical reasoning skills, which is something that's not taught in school, right? I mean, there's never, unless you take a logical reasoning course, like it's not ever explicitly taught. It is implicitly taught, right? It's taught in labs. I mean, labs are effectively analyzing, the outcomes of things as you do this and do this and do that. But you go to the sciences, you go to the labs, 9 times out of 10, when you're taking a lab course or taking a lab as part of a course, you're just trying to get through the lab, right? You're just trying to get the technique down. So you can do all things. So you're not actually thinking about the actual analysis and the reasoning that's there. And then at the same time, the way that, and this is, back to your question, the way that we have been, for the most part, educated when it comes to standardized exams, or not even, just reading in general, has been this concept of reading comprehension, right? Reading comprehension is different. There is reading comprehension as part of the car section, but it is not a reading comprehension test. A reading comprehension test is, you read something, now prove to me that you comprehended what was told to me. What the car section asks you to do is that, plus then do some actual analysis. Let me incorporate new information in a question that you have to then take that information that's in the question and apply it to the information that was presented to you in the passage and reason out what might happen. This, I mean, for those of you that have been studying or familiar with the MCAT, these are the questions that'll say things like, how would you strengthen the author's argument? How would you weaken the author's argument? Well, first you got to figure out the author's argument, and then you have to figure out what it would take in order to weaken the argument or strengthen the argument, et cetera, et cetera. So we won't do this today because we won't be looking at, say, this kind of day one, if you will, of us looking at cars here in this format. But there is some logical reasoning that comes into play, right? So this idea of actually identifying what is the evidence that's been presented to you in the argument? What is the conclusion that the author is making? I mean, that's what's always in any argument. And so this is note for everybody. In any argument, you're always presented with evidence and you're presented with a conclusion. Those are explicit statements that are made. The implicit statements that are not said are the assumptions. And assumptions are things that must be true in order for the evidence that you've provided to lead to the conclusion that has been stated. And then the implicit conclusions are the inferences that you can make based on the evidence and the assumptions leading to the conclusion. So really the true kind of formula for any argument, and this is not just for the MCAT, this is for any argument in life, is evidence plus assumption leads to a conclusion and inferences. The evidence and conclusion is explicit. The assumptions and inferences are implicit. They're not stated. You're being tested on the implicits, and that's where it can get a little bit difficult. So I know that was a long answer to a relatively short question, but that's the reason, right? That's the reason, because we don't do that on a daily basis. We don't do that on a regular basis. Lawyers do it all the time, right? That is what lawyers are in fact doing. And so they, we can maybe test it out and give a car section to a group of lawyers and see how they would do. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you say that, and my brain immediately goes to, well, are there any specific undergraduate level classes that may be good for lawyers, pre-law students, right, to potentially start to learn these skills? Right? I almost think, right, you say lawyer, I think debate. I wonder if there are some sort of debate style classes that are available, or just joining the debate club and be like, let me learn how to create arguments around something to start getting better at this. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Potentially. I think you could do a class. There's probably lots on YouTube that you could find as well without having to, eat up time as far as a class is concerned. But it's also about practicing it over the long term, right? Like if you just do it for a term or a semester. So I'm not disagreeing with you. Like, sure, if you can get some fundamental knowledge in, great. But it's also about actively using it. Right. I mean, if I take a class now and then I don't use it for 3 years, I'm not going to remember the stuff. Right. So it's and that's true whether it's a science class or it's a philosophy class or whatever it might be. So it's really about practicing it. And so there is a way to practice it. And the way to practice it is simple. It's to read, but while you're reading, to be actually interpreting what the arguments are that the authors are making in the articles that you're reading. Right. So, and when I say read, I don't mean like a novel, a story, right? I mean, I'm talking like scholarly or well-written articles, right? Things like, I personally, I don't have a subscription right now, but, I always like reading things like this is not an endorsement, Squad Quarter is not endorsing any one given publication, but like the level of writing, the New Yorker, right? Very, very good level of writing, the Atlantic Monthly, right? Like that kind of level of authorship is and oftentimes in those publications they are written, or the articles are written by authors who do publish much larger works, right? So it's a good place to look at, or good place to kind of get yourself comfortable with.
Okay. For those of you watching, ask your questions, ask your MCAT questions. Petros, let's go ahead and jump into our cars practice today as well.
Yeah. So yeah, if anybody has questions, let us know, because that's what we're here for. So we're gonna do things a little. This is episode 3, right? So
3.
or office hour 3, I should say. So we're gonna talk about cars. That came up quite a bit last week, so I figured it'd be good for us to talk a little about cars, and very specifically look at what it really means as far as the MCAT and cars is concerned. So, very simply put, this is what it means, right? You've got a cat, an MCAT, sitting in a car is what it is. So there's my corny joke for the day. Ha ha ha. But no, in all reality, I mean, everything we just talked about. Part of the issue with these passages, and I'm going to walk you through an example passage here, and we'll look at a question. Part of the issue with these passages is they are full of information. And when I say full of information, there are lots and lots of details. And it can get really, really kind of time consuming if you were to go through the passage and try to remember every single thing that the author is saying. And then you say, okay, I got to go now to the questions and figure out, where in the passage they mention this thing, et cetera, et cetera. So part of this, and part of doing well and getting faster and more efficient at cars passages in the cars section, is going to be about having a better plan of attack. And part of that plan of attack is a little bit of a mindset shift. And mindset shift number 1 is that you have to kind of undo this innate desire in our minds to remember everything that the passage was in fact saying, and really train yourself to not be reading for detail, but to be reading for purpose. And when I say reading for purpose, what I mean is, why did the author spend time writing this paragraph, right? Why does the author want me to know these things? What the things are less important. And that's, I think, where a lot of students get tripped up as far as the MCAT goes, as far as the cars section is concerned very specifically, is that we try to remember all the details. And this is also true in the other 3 sections. In fact, everything I talk about here today applies to the other 3 sections, because the other 3 sections are essentially car sections, but with science, right? This is cars with no previous knowledge. The second part of it is, and this is where I may offend some of you, and I apologize, your opinion doesn't matter, right? This is where things start to get interesting when you're reading these passages. The author might be talking about something that you totally disagree with. You're like, no, this is not the best pizza in the world, or this is not the best insert whatever in the world. Your opinion does not matter. The only opinion that matters is the author's opinion that they are sharing with you, whether explicitly or implicitly. Rarely it's explicit. They'll never say, my opinion is. They'll say, and the second thing, and the third thing, and the fourth thing. So you have to kind of figure out what their opinion is. Or they're sharing with you the opinion of other people, right? So they're saying, Dr. Gray thinks this, and Petros thinks this, and Muhammad thinks that, right? So they might be sharing the opinions of other people, but your opinion doesn't matter, and your outside knowledge on the subject doesn't matter. So in fact, this won't happen, but let's say, just to kind of give an extreme example, they might be telling you something that is completely factually incorrect, and you're sitting there going, no, I know this not to be true, right? I know this isn't the real thing. You have to put that out of your mind. What they're telling you is the truth, right? As far as the information that's on the passage, because that's how these things are written. So that's the second thing about this. The third thing is related back to the purpose. Rather than you getting bogged down in the details, you want to be looking for clues in how an argument is made. All right. So Brian, you're going to be my example partner right now. Okay. So if I say, for instance, I really like the color blue. However, what do you know is about to happen? What am I about to say next?
I don't know.
Well, I said, however. So what is that?
Oh, yeah. However, I missed that. Right.
You missed that. Yeah, I really like
I
totally.
thought however was tied. I thought however was tied into the what am I gonna say next?
No. Sorry.
Yeah. You're gonna say something that you dislike about blue.
Exactly, right? So that's a key word, right? So finding those key words is going to be a key part of doing well on these passages. So those are three things: is you're looking for purpose, you're looking for kind of what that, or you're keeping yourself out of it, and then you're looking for structure, right? And the structure actually tells you a lot, despite what the words are that come after the structure has been set up. So I thought it'd be fun, because I'm quirky this way. I thought it'd be fun, since we're talking about cars, to look at a passage that is about cars. So how better else to look at this section than to put something in, and you'll learn something, right? Maybe you'll learn something as far as the history of the automobile. So here's what we've got. This is the first paragraph. This is a 4-paragraph passage, very typical for the MCAT, kind of lengthwise, if you will, but also kind of in the way that this is written, the typical way, and this is going back to how we build arguments. The typical way that we build arguments is we state our opinion up front. I'm talking about just in life in general, right? I want to go here, right? I have stated my opinion right from the get-go. That's too easy for the MCAT. They're not going to open in the first line with what their argument is and then list out their evidence. They're going to kind of build to things. So this is what we hate, actually, when people do this in conversation. We hate this because we say, what's the point you're trying to make, right? And this is literally what we do. We're like, people say, I have this and I have this and I have this. I'm like, what are you trying to tell me? Get to the headline. We normally in life want to start with the headline, and then we give our backup to the headline. But with the MCAT, they're not going to do that because that's too easy, right? So we have to kind of think in the mind of how the MCAT is. Usually, in a first paragraph, they will give you kind of some background, right? It's an intro like anything else. So here they say the first gasoline-powered car to rattle down a public road in the 1890s has often been portrayed as the opening bow of a triumphant symphony of technological progress. I mean, that's a very beautifully written kind of opening line. But really what they're telling me is cars showed up in the 1890s, right? I don't care. I mean, this is, and I'm going to sound very critical, but this is how I want you to reading these passages. I don't care that it was a symphony of technological progress. I care that they're telling me that first cars showed up 1890s, right? That's literally all that we needed to hear. Crescendoing inevitably toward the sleek highway sedan and connected electric vehicle. We say, okay, they're showing me the progress. Great, wonderful. That's all I need to know. And then we got this word according to, and that's one of those key words, one of those key transitionary words that gives us a clue. What we know, and this is kind of how you have to start training yourself, what we know is about to happen when we see words like according to, is they're going to give us some backup information, right? They're going to say, here's what I'm basing this off of. According to the popular narrative, the horse-drawn carriage simply could not compete with the internal combustion engine's superior speed, reliability, and modern glamour. And so it disappeared as quickly as a lamplighter at dawn. And then they give me this other word that says yet. And that's the same as however. What we know at this point is something different is coming, right? The way that this is written, it says according to the popular narrative. Now we have a yet, so we're going to get the contrast. So immediately in the opening paragraph, you've had a setup of intro, and you've had a setup of this contrast, these kind of contradictory viewpoints that are coming into play. And this is all how the author is building their argument, right? Historians of technology have increasingly challenged this teleological tale, urging us to hear the dissonant notes muted by the orchestration of hindsight. So in basic terms, they're telling us very simply, right, with these kind of key parts, that they're setting up their argument. And the argument that they're setting up is that, hey, the story that we have kind of accepted to be true might not necessarily be true, right? They're not telling us that it isn't true yet, but they're saying, hang on a minute, take these things with a grain of salt because it might be a little bit different. And now I'm going to show you why I think that's different. This goes back to what I was saying earlier, the author's opinion, right? So we've got this first paragraph. Why the author wrote the paragraph was to set up their argument. That's the only reason why the paragraph is there. What the argument is also important, but the reason why the paragraph exists is to set up the argument. Full stop, plain and simple, right? There's nothing more to it at that point. You then go to the second paragraph, and you can already start, and this is kind of where your training, your practice comes into play. You should already be thinking, okay, if they've just given me this setup, naturally what the next thing is that they're going to want to do is start proving their point, right? They're going to, I mean, that's how, and this is not MCAT specific. This is how we do things in life, right? I've set you up. Now I'm going to drive my point home, and I'm going to tell you why I believe that this thing that I have stated here is true, right? So this is, and if you guys have, if you all have questions as we go, like type them in. Don't hesitate is what it comes down to. This is a way of writing, but more importantly, a way of testing that is actually achieving multiple things at once, right? Was the student who's reading this paragraph able to see through the cloudiness, right? Are they able to hone in on the fact that this is an argument that's being set up? So here we go. Second paragraph. On the ground, the transition was less a clean swap than a prolonged coexistence that revealed the fragility as much as the power of the new machine. So in that first sentence, they have told us that, hey, it might seem like horses kind of disappeared and cars showed up on a flip of a switch, but it was really a prolonged coexistence. These two were around for a long time. And then they're going to give us the points of that, right? Early motorists in many American cities kept livery stables in business. They still needed horses to haul fuel, spare parts, stranded vehicles. Newspapers from the 1900s are peppered with complaints about the unruly contraption whose tires blew, whose engines overheated, whose drivers required both goggles and grit to navigate unpaved roads. In response, municipal governments initially favored electric streetcars because they were perceived as safer and more civil over private automobiles. So we are getting the setup that, hey, cars kind of sucked, right? And we still needed the horses. We still needed kind of to have the backup plan because these things were not great initially. And in fact, electric streetcars were the things that were being favored because they were being seen as more safe. And then the last line, the political triumph of the automobile, therefore, anytime you see a therefore, that means there's a conclusion coming or an opinion coming. Owed as much to the lobbying by oil and rubber interests as to any intrinsic mechanical advantage, right? So it's now they're setting up kind of this secondary argument of, hey, you know what? There was actually something else at play here that was coming into this thing becoming popular, or how this thing became popular. There was actually somebody else trying to push this through because maybe, and this is not necessarily for you to have to analyze, but maybe, right, the doubt is there. Maybe we would have been fine with just having a ton of electric streetcars and horses still roaming around, right? So this is the argument that the author is trying to make here. So again, what we have is that it wasn't a smooth transition, and there may have been an external factor that played a role in the transition eventually over to cars as we know them today, the connected electric vehicle, as they said in the first paragraph. So now what we have is we have the first paragraph that has set up the argument, the second paragraph, which is this, hey, it wasn't as smooth as we think it was. So now we got a third paragraph, which is going to expand on this because they say nor, right? Anytime you open with the word nor, you know that something negative is coming because it's right. It's not or, it's nor. So this is the negative or. Nor was the automobile's victory universal. And as soon as they say that, your mind, and this is where your training kind of will come into play. As soon as you see the word nor, everything that follows afterwards is going to be to prove that point. Okay? So this is where I'm going to go with this. With one word, the one word nor, I technically don't need to read the rest of this paragraph because I already know, and you already know, that everything that is more likely than not to be stated in the rest of this paragraph is going to be reasons for why the automobile's victory was not universal, right? It didn't happen all at once. The specific details that they state are the specific details that they have decided to state. But what we know is we've got the details in there because of the word nor, right? Because of one little tiny word. I'm going to take a pause here. I know we've been kind of talking a lot, right, in terms of this. You can read this, read what the details are. But from a perspective as far as, you know, the structure is concerned, we know that right away it's not an automatic win, right? And they're just giving us examples of this, right? So they tell us that actually this one campaign was funded not by motorists, but by farmers who wanted to bring more produce to the market, right? And then, that's great. So like they tell us who was that was actually driving the point home. That wasn't meant to be a pun, but yeah, they're driving to the market as a word. And the fourth paragraph then, and this is where it gets kind of real interesting, is the fourth paragraph now is actually where you get the argument, right? It says the stakes of how we tell the story are hardly antiquarian. Contemporary debates over autonomous vehicles and lithium supply chains still lean on the assumption that technology selects itself, that the better device dethrones the worse with Darwinian economy. But if we look at the archival record of the early automobile, the new machines are adopted or resisted through a messy choreography of infrastructure, culture, finance, and contingency. If we mistake that choreography for a straight line, we risk once again surrendering choice to the illusion of inevitability. So now the author is driving their main point home, and that main point is this wasn't a smooth transition. It didn't happen all at once. It wasn't universally accepted. It was something that took time. And hey, the future is going to be the same way, right? You're not going to all of a sudden have electric self-driving automobiles replace gasoline-powered or diesel-powered engines or engine-driven cars. Okay, that's again outside the scope, but that's the point that they're trying to make. All right? Fun times. Brian, would you agree? Fun times?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So now, how do you put it all together, right? So you've got these kind of four different areas. Now the MCAT asks the question. So right now we can bring somebody on cam if they want. So I just didn't want it for the passage because it can get a little daunting. So if somebody wanted to jump on, you could try this on try this out live here. But this is. Do you want to give a second for people to come on, or?
Let me get a link and see if anyone wants to come on and practice with us, answer some questions. You can go ahead. We have other questions too. They can come on.
So this one says, which statement best expresses the author's principal claim about the emergence of the automobile? Right. So this is going back to that notion of they want to know what his main point is. We didn't get the main point at the beginning. We got the main point kind of throughout. And it's literally towards the end is where we got it, which was that it took time, right? It was something that took time. So here's the thing with getting cars questions correct and getting cars questions correct efficiently. You want to go into the answer choices looking for something versus going through the answer choices and trying to find something that will work. That's another big kind of mistake. That's true for the entirety of the MCAT. So if we look at answer choice A, it says the automobile quickly replaced the horse. As soon as you see the word quickly, we know that's not true because we've just spent 4 paragraphs reading through something that was saying, hey, it didn't happen quickly. So you can eliminate answer choice A right from the get-go. The adoption of the automobile was a gradual, contested process shaped by factors beyond mechanical performance. That's the point that they're making, right? When they were saying there was the lobbying as far as the oil, the lobbying as far as the rubber, the financial concerns, right? That was the whole point that they're making. So we'll keep it. C says municipal governments universally encourage automobiles to stimulate economic growth. They didn't. They thought they were unsafe, right? I mean, that was if anything, they favored electric streetcars is what they told us. And historians have exaggerated the automobile's drawbacks to promote alternative transportation. Also, paragraph number 1, right? That one didn't. Paragraph number 1 very clearly said the opposite. They've exaggerated the automobile's kind of success is what it is. So that's the so that one's not going to be it. The correct answer has to be and can only be answer choice B. It's the only one that comes through or states the whole point that they were trying to make, right? A, C, and D are all kind of they're all wrong, but they're all wrong for a very specific reason, right? The word quickly is wrong in answer choice A. The word universal, encouraging, or encouragement is wrong in answer choice C. The exaggeration of the drawbacks to promote alternative transportation, that is opposite of what we saw in paragraph number 1. In fact, the historians kind of have given it this one thing, this one story that, hey, it was so great, everybody wanted to have a car right away. So the only one that's going to work is going to be answer choice B, a question like this, right? So again, it's about going in, looking for things, as opposed to letting things find you. That one was an easier question. I won't say it's an easy question, but it was an easier question because this is what we refer to as a question that is looking at the passage as a whole, right? So the overall argument. These are main idea questions as far as what you're looking out for. This one gets a little bit more specific, right? According to the passage, which factor initially led municipal governments to favor electric streetcars over private automobiles, right? There was a very specific place that they told us that. So here's how you would do this on the exam. You would go and say, okay, and I'm going to click through the slides here just because you would scroll on the exam. You would click through and say, where do they mention electric cars? Well, they mentioned it in the second paragraph, right? On the ground, the transition was less a clean sweep. This was the paragraph they talked about it. They said it right here. Municipal governments initially favored electric streetcars. And the reason why they favored them was they were perceived as safer and more civil over the private automobiles. So they have explicitly told us why streetcars were favored. This is a detail question. This is one where you do need to use your passage outline or your passage map or whatever you want to call it to go back into the actual passages, go back to the paragraph, find the location where they talked about electric streetcars, and find the reason according to the passage why they thought that was the case. So what we should be looking for is something that says that they thought that streetcars were safe or safer than cars. A says streetcars required no imported fuel. This is out of scope. It's true, or could be true, that streetcars require no imported fuel because maybe you are using hydroelectric power that's generated from Niagara Falls to make the electricity that will then power the streetcar. But we don't know, right? We don't know that they require no imported fuel. We don't know if a municipality actually had to burn fuel from another country in order to make the electricity, whatever it might be. So A can't be right. B, which a lot of you were saying, streetcars were viewed as safer and more civil, almost an exact quote from the passage, which is how these questions are going to be. It's going to be something that was stated there. With C, streetcars generated greater tax revenue. Maybe, right? But it's out of scope. I don't know. They didn't really talk about tax revenue. And if anything, streetcars probably wouldn't generate tax revenue. They would probably cause you to spend more tax revenue that you created. Streetcars could be manufactured domestically, right? Again, these are all things that are not discussed or not mentioned. The only thing that was actually explicitly stated was they were viewed as safer and more civil. So you can root it right back into the text. The others are there as distractors, right? And that's where a lot of times we get lost, because you think, oh yeah, no, they're electric, so they don't require fuel. Electricity comes from somewhere, right? It's not like it magically appears. You have to generate the electricity. So, that's the way to be looking at it. So anyway, these are two example questions from this passage that, I think kind of show the point of, with a good outline, not getting bogged down in the details. I mean, we specifically didn't underline the electric cars are viewed as being safer. That's fine. You're still going to be able to get to the answer because you know where to go look for the answer, right? I know it's like a store. I know where the toilet paper is located. I don't necessarily know what price they're charging this week, but I know where to go, and I don't know which brands they're offering, but I know where to go. Right, I know where in the store. I don't know why I said toilet paper. That's what, maybe I need to go to Costco and pick up toilet paper. Who knows? But right, it's the right. So it's we know where to go look for something. That's what's going to be absolutely key with things like that. Fun times with the automobile. Fun times with cars.
All day, every day.
All day, every day. Which, in all seriousness, all day, every day is not a bad strategy for cars. Like, just always be doing something related to cars, be it reading, be it doing some practice problems. Like, keeping that skill growing definitely will help. Yeah.
For those watching, ask your questions about cars or MCAT in general, and let us know. The plan is for us to be here on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. This was definitely the lowest attended one. Not sure if the cars, because I mentioned we were going to cover cars today.
Yeah.
I don't know if that scared people away. They're like, I don't want to. Cars just makes me feel bad, so I'm going to stay away.
I thought about that as we were going. I was like, did we? Because last week everyone was asking about cars, but then I was like, did we? Did everybody go? No. So
yeah. Siobhan asks, how do you determine which keywords or phrases to highlight in a passage? I often find myself highlighting entire paragraphs that seem important.
So Siobhan, if you're highlighting the entire paragraph, then you're not highlighting, right? Because you're highlighting, but you're not highlighting because you're not actually isolating is what it comes down to. So the keys are the key words. So like the words like according, yet, right? Those kinds of transitionary keywords are going to be the ones that you're going to want to highlight. And then anything, really good highlighting is minimal highlighting, because otherwise you're not really highlighting. You're just, if you open up like an old college textbook and it's completely highlighted, that means the person was just trying to make everything colorful, right? It wasn't actual keywords. The other one to be on the lookout for is themes that you see starting to reoccur, right? So if you've seen them mention, like in this one, right, they kept talking about this wasn't fast, this wasn't smooth, this wasn't easy. Like you say, okay, I'm trying to pick up on what the what the points were that were coming through. Usually the first sentence in a paragraph, if it's a well-written paragraph, will have words that are setting up the argument, right? Yet this wasn't universal. Okay, it wasn't universal. That's something I want to be highlighting. So that's the thing there. Your other alternative is kind of what we did here on the screen, is to just jot these things down on a kind of passage outline on your scratch board, right? The whiteboard that they give you.
Looking back at the slide, why?
Yeah.
So the things that you kind of highlighted after the fact, would these be things that you would highlight as you're reading?
They would be things that you could highlight as you were reading, but you may need to highlight after you have read through the entire paragraph. here's what I mean by this. So if we go to this one, right, as soon as you see nor, you highlight it. When you're here, though, it says on the ground, the transition was less a clean sweep than a prolonged coexistence that revealed the fragility. As you read it, you might go, oh, I see a contrast. Less a clean sweep, fragility. So now I'm going to highlight those, right? And so it's like that. Then you don't see it as you're going. You don't know that the word or the words less a clean sweep. I don't know why I didn't underline the word a, but you don't see that less a clean sweep and fragility are going to be important until you go, oh, wait a minute, that's a contrast. Let me highlight that, right? You see the therefore towards the end of the paragraph. The thing that comes after the therefore is going to be important because there's a reason why the therefore was there. So you can highlight the therefore. You could highlight the thing that they actually said. I like to. That doesn't mean you have to. It's just it's an easier, okay, this was the therefore. This is the thing that they're actually thereforeing. So let me highlight that. But if you have the therefore highlighted, you know that whatever comes afterwards is also kind of is implicitly highlighted. So it's it's already there. So hopefully that answers that question.
Nice. What other questions do you all have as you have us here to answer your MCAT questions? Christopher on Instagram says, I'm more scared of Gen Chem or going physics than cars. You would probably be in the minority, but good. Those are ones you can study. I think more easily. Should I read the questions prior to reading the passage and highlight the answers I find as I go?
Nope. Nope. So here's the thing. So I'm gonna get on my soapbox again. Do not read the questions before you read the passage. And the reason for that is if you go read the questions and you go and read all of the questions, one, you have to click through each question to read them. Then you have to go back and read the passage. And I can almost guarantee you that you're not going to remember all 5 or 6 questions that they've asked you as you're reading through the passage. And then by the time you finish reading the passage, you're going to have to reread the questions to know which one it is that you're ultimately answering. So not a great time-saving strategy at all. There's kind of there's urban legends out there that, oh, I should do that. And then that way I know what to be reading for, which is pretty much what you're asking. And the reality is no. I mean, that first question is a good example of it, actually, because that was a question that required you to have read the entire paragraph in order to be able to answer, or the entire passage in order to be able to answer it. So,
yeah, and it's a common strategy that people talk about. It's like, go look at the questions first.
It is. And so Siobhan says something about, I preview the questions, so you can get a better understanding of what I'm about to read. That's fine, but you can also, I'm not, do you, but like, you're also about to read it, so you're going to find out what you're going to read about, right? There's that. And as far as MCAT questions are concerned, there are only so many ways they can ask a question. All they're changing is the details that are related to the passage, right? Like in the one that we looked at where it said, why do they think electric streetcars were safer? You could have inserted any subject matter in there, right? Why did they think that this pizza was tasted better, right? Like that is a detailed question. So the question types are all they're not changing is what it comes down to. So.
Yeah. I would love for people that use that strategy, go and time yourself, start a stopwatch. As soon as you go into that next passage, how long does it take you to click through the questions, understand the questions, and then go back to the passage? I'm assuming 20 or 30 seconds maybe to do that. Like, is it worth losing that much time in being able to actually read it and then answer the questions? I don't know. Awesome. Let's see. Emily says on Instagram, thank you for the input. It makes sense. Yeah. So good. That's why we're here. Help clear up confusion. and part of it, right? I think Petros, this is where it gets a little bit hard. Is there's no perfect way for everyone.
Yeah.
Potentially,
Yeah.
go and try it and see if it. Right.
Yeah.
For me, maybe if there's a psychological stress reduction in it that helps you in the long term, great. Like, go for it.
Yeah, I didn't mean to sound overly emphatic in my like, no, don't do it. But but the reason I'm emphatic in saying no, don't do it is because overall it does eat up more time. But you're right. Like if there's a psychological calming that you're gonna just need anyway, or if you're gonna be just doing nothing for 30 seconds to like reset yourself, okay, look through the questions. It was easier in the past. So in the past, when it was a paper-based exam, all the questions were right there in front of you. So you could like literally go through them very quickly.
Good point.
And back, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I would recommend that you would look at the questions ahead of time because you could actually do it in a much more easier fashion. And then when the test went to the computer-based format, all the questions showed up with, there were two scrolling sides, right? So there was the side to scroll the passage and the side to scroll the question. So even then you could scroll up and down. When they changed it where it was one question showing up at a time, that's in the like literal mechanics of clicking and going backwards and forwards and all that stuff. That's where things started to change and started to kind of, make less sense, I guess is what it comes down to. But yeah, try all the things. It's a really old, it's like maybe 15, 20 years old now. But there's a great TED Talk it's by Malcolm Gladwell about spaghetti sauce. And he talks about the history of how we got to, I would encourage everybody to watch this. He talks about how we now have so many varieties of spaghetti sauce. But the point he's making is there's no such thing as the perfect spaghetti sauce. Because for years, the Pregos and Ragus of the world were trying to find the perfect spaghetti sauce. And it was only after a whole lot of research and a whole lot of time that very smart people with lots of data showed there's no such thing as the perfect tomato sauce or spaghetti sauce. There's only the best spaghetti sauces. And the same happened then in the pickle industry. It then happened in every single industry that's out there. That's why today there isn't one, scent of soap for a brand. There's like 7 scents of soap. There's 7 different types, right? So it's a great one to watch.
Interesting.
Kind of when you said that, I was like, yeah, this is don't try to find the perfect pickle is the line.
There's no perfect pickle. I hate pickles, so ain't no pickles in my neighborhood. Don says, I'm new here. When is too soon to try and study for the MCAT? I haven't finished prereqs, and I'm about 18 months away from finishing them. For context, I will need probably a stellar MCAT for matriculation, current sub 3.0 nursing student here. So GPA, not a strong suit. So Don, I'll just give quick, my quick 2 cents. On the advising side of the house, we generally don't think of MCAT making up for a poor GPA. So you have 18 months of your grades left, crush those as much as possible. And then yes, also crush the MCAT. So when is too soon, Petros? I know some people are like, as soon as I hit freshman year in my Gen Chem classes, I'm going to sit there with my MCAT book and start studying for the MCAT.
Yeah, no. I mean, you can. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not a bad idea to familiarize yourself with what you're going to be responsible for in the future, because the conversations I have with a lot of students are like, well, I took chem, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I haven't done anything with it since. It's like, all right, well, you have to relearn that. So it's not a bad idea to do that. Generally speaking, you want to give yourself about 4 to 5 months studying for the MCAT, and you want your prerequisites to be done for the most part, right? There's a couple prerequisites like the tail end of physics 2 that you can get away with not having finished prior to studying for the MCAT, because it's not really on the MCAT, or not a whole lot of it's on the MCAT. It's on a high yield area of topics. So, generally speaking, that's where you're at. So Dawn, you're about 18 months away from finishing your prereq. So you're probably about 18 months away from starting your MCAT prep, and then give yourself about 4 to 5 months to actually prepare for the exam.
Yeah. Good luck. Let's see. Emily continuing her conversation about reading the questions first. Timing just doubled reading the questions, eating up so much time. Looking for those keywords. Good. You mentioned it a little bit earlier. There's a question here. I'll copy it over so I can put it on the screen. I wish Instagram comments came over, but they don't. Best resource for study for cars and psych sections, psych soc. Let's not forget about sociology. I find that UWorld is good, but somehow I'm scoring lower on the psych and car section on the AAMC full lengths.
So for psych soc,
the ACMAS full lengths.
I just saw that. For the psych soc, it's a lot of terminology. Is going to be a big part of it. So Khan Academy has some great, good videos that you can be checking out free, as far as getting all that terminology in and understanding it and knowing how to apply it. When you say UWorld is good, but somehow I'm scoring lower in the car sections, that's not. I mean, that is also going to be linked to the difference between doing questions individually versus doing questions under timed conditions, full-length exam, 7.5 hours straight of testing, where endurance and fatigue also needs to be trained. So I've seen that a lot too. Students say, well, when I do one passage, I get all the questions right, but when I'm trying to do 8 in a row or 9 in a row in a section, my score dips. And well, part of the reason why the score is dipping, because there's multiple factors to you doing well on this exam, on any exam. It's not just knowing the stuff. It's not just knowing how to apply the stuff. It's also being able to execute and to be, able to endure the exam, right? Like that's the, sometimes, we see this happen sometimes, a lot of times in sports, right? Where it's just, maybe there's not a better player, just one was able to last longer, right? Was able to still be, to not cramp up, right, as far as their muscles are concerned, because they have better endurance training. So there's also there's also kind of that factor that comes into play as you're looking at these. So
yeah,
Eric, I wouldn't identify these as being intensely extremely easy. I'm glad you felt they were easy. Part of that also probably has the factor of the fact that I was walking you through them. Just to be, just to kind of lay that out. I mean, I've heard this a lot through the years. My students say, "Oh, when you do it, it looks so easy," and it's like, well, of course it does, because I'm literally like leading you to the water, right? I haven't thrown you in the desert and said, "Go find the oasis." I'm like, here's the path to get to where where things are. So the goal, though, and this is, I think, where you come into play. The goal is for you to train yourself so that it is just, okay, I know the path that I'm supposed to be taking. You're not trying to, the last thing you want to be doing on the exam or on the day of the test is still figuring it out, right? You want to be, okay, here's my plan of attack. Here's I'm going to go about this, right? I mean, a surgeon doesn't cut open a patient, hopefully, and go, okay, let's figure this out. Right? They've gone through the motions so many times that they are able to go right for what they want to do and get it done.
Yeah, no, surgeons definitely
yeah.
have a plan going in.
Hopefully, right?
Visualizing it, trying to figure out what could go wrong and what they're going to do.
Knowing what to do when something does go wrong, right? Or if the anatomy is slightly different, or if there's scar tissue, right? They're ready for all the contingencies. You have to be as well. So
got to be ready. Siobhan says, I thought there would be more questions. There generally are more questions on a real passage. We just have a couple today to go over. Hubs, what strategy has more impact on an MCAT score than sheer numbers of practiced test taking questions?
Yeah, so Hubs, I'm glad you asked the question. It's not about the number of questions that you do. That's a misnomer sometimes, or a misconception, where it's just thought, oh, I just do a lot of questions. Yes, you do need to do a lot of questions, but it's about doing the questions and reviewing them, analyzing them, seeing what, why did you get them wrong? Why did you get them right? What's the, I lost my train of thought for a second there. What's the thinking of the process that I used to get the question right? How could I have made it more efficient? right? How could I have gotten the question right maybe faster or not done as much work? So it's that analysis and that reflection that you will have to do as you're studying for this exam. So it's not just, I mean, I talk to students who say, well, I'm taking a full length exam every week and I just started studying for the MCAT and that's going to improve my score. And I look at them, I'm like, no, it's not. Right? No offense. Like you're this is the first time you're doing it. We've helped people do this a lot. Like that's not going to work. Like it's you need to be systematic. You need to have a plan. You need to have a plan that you adjust. You need to be doing the right work because you will gravitate towards doing things that you are better at. You have to feel comfortable feeling uncomfortable. I hate to say it, but that's the reality of studying for this exam. That is literally what our team does is help students work through and build out the plans that are going to work for them. The last thing you want to be doing, you're going to hear me say this a lot during these office hours. Last thing you want to be doing is looking at your friends and being like, well, what did you do? Well, I'm going to do the same thing, right? Or I read it on Reddit, so it must be true. No, it's not. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, practice questions and and so much more. All right. Eric agrees with you. Yeah, those are easier because it's a safer environment here. Easier environment. All right, friends. With that, another MCAT office hours in the books. Tell your friends, tell your pre-med clubs, tell everyone that we're here answering questions Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern to help you through this crazy process. So, what's the best place to watch the live feed? Emily asks. We stream this to YouTube is the main place. Obviously, it's on Instagram, but the format isn't perfect for Instagram. But come over to YouTube. medicalschoolhq.net is our YouTube channel, or just premed.tv. Because I got a URL for that. I got a URL for everything. All right, friends. Petros, thank you so much for hanging out. Goodbye.